functional relationship with me like that? Okay, then you got to change the behavior of how you are in a relationship. If I'm a mentor to you, then the first thing you need to learn about all relationships, is you have to learn that respect will begin to build trust. Can you write that down? Respect will begin to build trust. Trust is not just something that's given. I've been testing you from the time that I met you approximately 8 or 9 years ago. I test Brian. I test Scribe. I test my wife. Why? Why do I do that? Okay, so you didn't answer the question. You're saying, yeah, I said, why do I test everybody? Very simple. Very simple, because the scripture tells me to do it. I don't fight the scripture. The first thing with scripture is you need to know it. You need to learn it. You need to get the knowledge. Once you get the knowledge, that's when the do 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 do. So if the scripture is telling me that I'm supposed to pray, if the scripture is telling me that I'm supposed to pray without ceasing, and that I'm supposed to test everything, then what I do is I bring that combination together, and I'm praying and I'm asking Yah, okay, what's the test that I can put in this situation so that I can think like you think? Because guess what? If you don't think he's testing you, I think Yah is testing us constantly. And I think that he's testing us. Good morning. I think he's testing us because he wants to bring out the best in us. The test brings out the best. Can you write that down? It's good stuff. I probably, in 10 of my songs that I've written in my life, and I've written over 100 songs, test and best as a rhyme is in like 10 different songs. So I've understood that my Abba Yah was testing me already in my teens, and that is why I am so grateful that I had whatever scriptural knowledge given to me as I was growing up by my father. And I can never, ever be upset, and I thank my dad very, very much that he has, at least out of all the bad things that he's done, and he's made a lot of mistakes, but my dad got the word in me enough that I realized I need more of it. I need to keep seeking Yah through this word. So you may not realize, but everything that happened in that call last night was setting you up for your next test. How is she going to handle this? That's what was going on as everybody was speaking. And when you had the opportunity to open up your mouth and do a few different possibilities. One could have been, well, first off, I'd like to thank all the elders of love for taking time out to care enough about me to help me to grow. That would have been a great start. That would have been yawesome. Or, first off, I'd like to say I'm deeply sorry for my inappropriate behavior yesterday, or today, whatever, last night when you were doing it, you know? But instead, what you did was you responded as the wounded puppy and just came out with, first off, think about the puppy again. Let's just really use the puppy today. When the puppy does wrong and gets yelled at and puts the tail down between her legs, right? And she kind of wanders off like, oh, they're unhappy with me right now. I must have did something. Doesn't even know, oh yeah, peeing on the floor 5 minutes ago and now they just found it. Doesn't even connect it unless you actually take the dog over to where it was and you show them. You might have to even put their face in it so that they get it on their face and they smell it. It's like, oh, I'm getting yelled at because I pissed again. Oh, wow, I'm not supposed to piss in the house. Oh, wow. It's the same situation that the puppy does, that after a half an hour or so, the puppy looks at you when they see you and they want to start wagging their tail and saying, are we good now? That is the behavior of the old Marissa to the T. She would rather avoid talking about it, just sweep it under the rug, and act like she never pissed on the floor in the first place. And that's what I woke up to this morning, and that's what happened last night. You didn't address it properly last night, and you still didn't address it this morning. What you could have done this morning was, instead of feeling sorry for yourself and moping around that you were going to have to take the bus, you could have done the proper apology this morning. And I don't know where your foolish pride, and it's an evil demon, I don't know where your foolish pride got so strong that you have a hard time saying you're sorry, saying thank you, and saying please. I just don't, it's a defiance to proper etiquette, to building relationships with people. You cannot build relationships with people without thank you, please, and I'm sorry. You just can't do it, because people will feel disrespected, taken advantage of. They're going to feel really indifferent about you as a person, and they're going to be questioning you in the back of their mind. What's the person's motives here? Are they using me? Are they just taking advantage of me? Obviously, it's all about them. They don't care about me at all, because they don't even have the decency to say, I'm deeply sorry. And all they're thinking about is their own pain and their own issues and their own connection back to their childhood when they got confronted for doing wrong. This isn't a dysfunctional correction. This isn't what your mom did or what Don did to you. This is a healthy, functional family necessity on how these issues need to be addressed. You cannot fix things that need to be fixed by avoiding them. Can you write that down? You cannot fix things that need to be fixed by avoiding them. Objective lesson. Your husband got on the phone with me, and I began to try to counsel your ex-husband, I should say, who may not be your ex-husband today had you changed, because you kept pointing the finger at him and say, but he does, but he did, but he, and you kept wanting to look at his defects You wanted to see that he had false gods, which he did, and it's like, well, you married the guy. Now you want to sit and you want to, and it's like the after the fact, the same way you're doing the after the fact thing now with you're sitting in front of Goodwill, and now you want to talk about the other jobs, which is what Sam confronted last night. Your timing was like, duh. Why would you sit in front of the employer that you're now late for and want to sit and tell me that you want the other job? And you actually didn't only say you wanted the other job, you acted as if they already hired you, which they have not. Until they give you hours and tell you you're starting tomorrow at such and such a time, you have not been hired yet. It's a potential job. So you never give up something you got for something you don't got yet. So it was completely irrelevant to be thinking about fine foods when Goodwill already had you hired. I had you contact Home Depot because we definitely believed out of the two, and we were going by faith, that one of those two, Goodwill or Fine Foods, was going to hire you. And we didn't want to send you off into a bad place that was unsafe. It's a very bad neighborhood up there. And honestly, a big part of it for me is knowing that somebody just got shot at this bus stop down here. I don't want to send you on a frickin' bus because I love you and I care about you. Duh! What do you think this is leading to? I've been waiting for an apology since early this morning. I kept going around the camp. All you had to do, instead of looking at me like you were a wounded puppy, is you should have said, I totally screwed up yesterday. I really, really hurt your feelings. Your wife even told me you were really hurt. And I love you and I don't want to hurt you. That's what I've been waiting for. Don't you know how to... You obviously don't know how to do that.
I wasn't ready yet.
You weren't ready yet.
I don't want to apologize when it's on the spot. I want to apologize when I feel ready to apologize.
Well, you're waiting on a situation like that. I don't know where you ever learned or thought that that was good. No. The scripture tells you very clearly, go to that person. Go to that person. Go to that person. It doesn't say wait for a long period of time and let the person hurt. Let the person think, well, I just did my best to try to yank an apology out of her and I couldn't even get her to do it. And then a week later, after she's been taking the bus and being in the danger zone and feeling even more sorry for herself, you cannot live life feeling sorry for yourself. That is your past, and you got to get over it. Because guess what? We're not going to feel sorry for you. I hope you're catching that. I think it sucks that you went through an abusive life. I think that you've been not only abused by your family, but by the system, because they sucked you into the mental health system and really screwed you up worse. And they taught you a lot of bad stuff. And now my job is I've got to unlearn you from all that social services bullshit, to be honest with you, because I think social services is a bunch of bullshit. I think half of those people that work there, they wouldn't know a moral or a value or something that Yah has laid down that's worked for, thousands of years in human relationships. They wouldn't know it if a Kitvei HaKadosh smacked them in the face. You could have that Sefer over there, the biggest one that we got, and you could smack that social services worker right in the face, and she wouldn't even realize anything. And it's that clueless attitude that they have is seemingly the kind of clueless attitude. So I don't know if it's a spirit that jumps off those people onto their clients, and then the psychiatrist jumps in and adds the witch doctor pharmakia thing and gets them more mesmerized by the whole evil. I don't know what happens to the brain when I see people go off into this fog like you seem to walk around in a lot of times. But I'm trying to pull you out of it. I'm the solution over here working on behalf of the King of Kings. And this is your chance. This is your chance to turn it all around. This is your chance to really be able to change it. To really have teshuvah. So this Sukkot is much more significant to you than probably any of the rest of us, because it really is seventh step time. You got to beg Yah to remove these defects. You got to beg him, please take this from me. Show me how to get this out. I don't want to walk in this no more. I have got to change, because it's destroying my life. And I'm going to be honest with you, with this kind of stuff, the way you are in human relationships, you raising either one of your two children, you would destroy them. They would be effed up kids if you don't get your transformation on. You got to get your transformation on, or you are going to damage kids. There are millions of people that are raising children right now that have no right, according to Yah's laws, according to what Yah says about the gift that that child is to a human being, they have no right to even have kids. They shouldn't have never did it, because they're going to be codependent with that kid. They're not going to love that kid. That is not love. They are going to dysfunctionally raise that child and have another freak show out there in society that I'm going to have to counsel and fix. That's what they're popping out. They're making so much work for this ministry in the world today. It's incredible. That's the way I look at things. I look at how many screwed up people there are out there and how much there's a need for not one Homa Shalom happening in Phoenix, Arizona. There needs to be thousands of these Homa Shaloms across this country. There need to be thousands of house of worships across this country. And I can't run them all. I can't lead them all. Your end game on this, and you've already said it, is you'd like to run one. Well, you're going to have to be counseled and receive the counsel before you're going to transform, so that you can learn from all of that experience, and it's going to become the very wisdom that is necessary for you to do what you need to do. So you can go to the bathroom, but we're now going to be running out of time from the time that I need to have my business meeting. And when that business meeting is done, we need to leave. So that means we're going to take off this time a half an hour early, because if we go ahead and we take that address, that we went to yesterday, we are looking at, I just want to make sure I get it right, 575 West Warner Road, Tempe, Arizona, 85284, Goodwill. It is 10 miles, and it says 22 minutes right now, according to the heaviness of the traffic. And you tried to walk out yesterday at quarter after. And when did I go out there? Over 10 minutes before that. So if we would have left when I walked out yesterday, which was actually after 8 o'clock, we would have had no stress in the ride. We would have comfortably drove up. We would have had complete shalom on the high Shabbat, and you wouldn't have wrecked my day.
So I went to the day yesterday.
Oh, whoa, she just said it for the first time. Let's get this on recording because we sure got a lot of bad stuff on the recording of all the bad behavior. So now let's get a good behavior here. She finally said it. And I don't know what the stubbornness is that Scribe was actually addressing this morning. Because it says stubbornness is as of witchcraft. So this could all be connected. That there's some kind of stubborn thing that makes you not want to say you're sorry. I don't know. But why don't you, I know you got to go to the bathroom.
I've been holding it for 20 minutes.
You've been holding it for 20 minutes. Well, you just went to the bathroom right before we got started.
It was like an hour ago.
All right, you go to the bathroom and think about how you're going to say this apology because you got one shot to get it right this time. I gave you a shot last night and you screwed it up. All right, we're going to turn, everybody, in the Kitvei HaKadosh. Hi, puppy. Hi. Hi. Good morning. Oh, yeah. And Abraham, too. Yeah. All right.
Oh my gosh!
Oh, yeah. You're not going to be able to do that when you get big, you know.
Oh my gosh!
Oh, man. You're going through the pricker bushes again. You've got them everywhere. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn to the Mishal, or Mishlei, the Proverbs 13. All right? And we're going to look at Proverbs 13 and read it. And we're actually going to have Ahava read it and hope that it sinks in. And I'm going to ask her to take her Hallelujah scriptures with her to work today. And she can read it again at break time. And then she can read it again at lunchtime. And then read it again on her next break. Because I think sometimes repetition, for me, has been one of my best teachers. Sometimes by the time I read something for the third or fourth or fifth or sixth, and especially the seventh time, I know that I have mastered it much more. I've memorized in my mind a portion of it. It started to sink in, and I remember Dex Yeager telling me that you haven't listened to a tape, so an audio tape, you haven't listened to a tape until you've listened to it at least 7 times. So same way with this message, for some of you, especially Ahava, she has the ability, the ability, to play the messages because I've given her that access so that she can have a library for her recovery. I'm going to ask her to replay this message of this morning over and over and over the next few weeks so that it starts to sink in as to what Mishlei 13 is really trying to say. So we're going to open our scriptures to Mishlei 13, and then whatever you missed going to the bathroom because you didn't take the phone with you to the bathroom, which you know that is the protocol. You don't just leave the broadcast behind. You take the broadcast with you to the bathroom. You take the broadcast with you when you go out and do the watering. You take the broadcast with you into the kitchen when you're going to do your chores. You're going to do all of the things while you're listening, and you want to sharpen your listening skills. Do you realize in first, second, and third grade, one of the things usually on the report card talks about listening skills? This is something that we are taught from the time we are grade schoolers, because if we don't listen well, we're going to miss what the teacher is saying, and therefore we're going to have some real challenges later on in life. So, Mishle 13, you got it? Proverbs 13? Yeah. All right. So, you got your shot. No. You're going to do that after you properly apologize. Wrong response. Don't worry about anything. If you're going to worry, don't pray. If you're going to pray, don't worry. Yeshua said, have no thought for tomorrow's sufficient for the day therein. Stay in the moment. The moment is really important right now. Scribe's calling me. I don't know why he's calling me.
Didn't mean to do that.
You didn't mean to do that. Okay. All right, good. Well, she's going to take a shot at this, so here she goes.
There's a lot of things that people talked about me, and I just don't know what else to do besides apologize, because I don't know how to address it. And I know that Yahweh has plans for me, but there's always some type of resistance in my growth, in my walk with Yahweh. And we're trying to figure it out, and I just feel like everyone's coming at me and being mean. So that's why I shut down, because I don't know what else to do, but I'm getting this phone. Everyone keeps addressing my problems, so now it's like, I know I have problems, now it's trying to get the solutions made. And I know the biggest thing is my schedule, and me and Rock have talked about it, but I don't think we sat down and put together an actual daily times and putting things into my schedule to see when I could make that time. Because I made a schedule, but I didn't fully follow it either, but we didn't go over it together. So I think my biggest challenge is following a daily schedule and sticking by it, which is something Sam has tried to help me with over the years, is telling me to have a schedule. And as well as what is it that he was saying about the walls being put up? A lot of it has to do with trust issues, and it's hard for me to trust people, especially when I have a hard time alone just trusting Yahweh. So that's my biggest defect, is trusting others, and as well as my love relationships. And the word curses I was against in that tarot reading in high school. So we had to pray about that part too. I think I wrote about it in an email. But pretty much whatever those lies in the tarot reading that my friend had given me about me having trouble in my relationships and my love life, whatever she said on the cards was just a lie. And then again, as Mark was saying, that my parents were not always that much of correcting in good ways. So I grew up in a lot of wrong ways of being taught, like wrong ways of not being affirmed, so I didn't have good affirmations. And then I always believed certain lies, because that's just what I grew up with, being in the middle of dysfunctional stuff in the middle of my mom's alcohol addiction in high school, and then I was in my own addiction in the middle of high school. So pretty much from a teenager on, I was just doing whatever I was doing. So part of my problem was just not having positive authority figures in my life. I think that's what the main issue is. And when I was on and off on my own since I was 19, and then I was just partying it up, so I just didn't have a care for other things in my young 20s. It's pretty much just drugs, and then trying to get by with what I knew, and I didn't have very much knowledge on how to do things properly because I was just doing it as I did it. And when you're doing it when you're high, it's not very successful. So that's why my success has been a mess in the past. And we're trying to establish my my adulthood, adulting as learning to do it with how I should be doing it, but I'm still learning how to do it. So my thoughts and prayers is to be able to do it the right way. And whatever it is that the resistance and the strongholds, I just pray for discernment and help with the elders so they can help me understand on how to break these things. So just for prayers on how to do it. So, because I don't want to be a puppy. I can't be a puppy forever. It's stressful for me as much as it is for Rock, because then all the stress that I go through, that he has to go through it too. And we don't want to have stress in our lives. So, and I probably did the same thing to Scribe about my stress in his house. So I apologize for being stressful. But I know that I just I can't live like that. My kids they don't deserve it either. My Eva, and my Aiden. I guess they don't understand. So it's hard for me because I have to be their mom, but I can't. I couldn't be a mom when I was high. So even when I was sober, I still tried, but I still struggled every time. So whatever it is that we're trying to figure out is, and I know it's not lost. It's just somewhere in the middle of the dirt pile. So you got to figure out how to find it. So I think he wants me to read this Proverbs. Is it the whole chapter? Read it. The 13.
Just read it so I tell you to stop.
Okay, I'll read chapter 13 in Proverbs. Starts at page 749 in the Hallelujah scripture. If anyone wants to join me.
Enthusiastically.
So.
Passionately. Powerfully. Speak the word.
The son is wise through his father's discipline.
All right, now say that again. Let's say a daughter.
A daughter is wise through her father's discipline.
Read it again.
A daughter is wise through her father's discipline.
Read it again.
A daughter is wise through her father's discipline.
Read it again.
A daughter is wise through her father's discipline.
Read it one more time.
A daughter is wise through her father's discipline.
All right, we don't have to go any further than that. That is the decree and the declare solution that she is going to write down, and she is going to speak that she is wise, and all this I don't know how to do stuff, she does know how to do stuff. You need to live that. That book is your solution. That's how your relationship with me as a yada and you as a daughter is going to need to live. You have to receive a father's discipline for you to become wise. Take out the word that you were seeing, because this is what the twisted mind does, is you were seeing mean. No, you were seeing mean. You were seeing me being mean. Why is he being mean to me? Oh, poor me. Why is he being... Instead of saying, wow, he loves me. That's why he's disciplining me. Because another scripture will tell you, a father who loves disciplines. That's why I'm disciplining. But discipline is not mean. If your daughter is about to electrocute herself by sticking a knife into a wall socket, and you go running to your daughter, yelling and screaming, "No!" Was that mean?
No.
Were you disciplining her and telling her not to do something that would hurt her? Yeah. Guess what? That's exactly what us elders have been trying to do with you. And none of us, even though Scribe can be very sarcastic at times, he really is not trying to be mean. He's really just being like, hello? You know? Are you that, like, out there in left field that you can't understand this common sense teaching of what I'm trying to teach you right now? And he's getting passionate about it, but he's not being mean. He's trying to discipline you as a father figure, as an elder in your life, because we're supposed to be fathers to the fatherless. And Don's an absentee guy. He's just not ever, I can see, he doesn't give a crap about you. He doesn't call you. He doesn't give you any encouragement. Does he call you on your birthday even?
Sometimes.
Sometimes he calls you on your birthday. Well, you know what? I don't expect my dad anymore to ever call me. If I don't call him, there ain't going to be a conversation. He does not reach out to me. Do I feel sorry for myself? No. And say, oh, then I'm just going to live in all of this dysfunctional thinking because I had a dysfunctional dad that didn't know how to deal with my drug addiction, so he got worse. And honestly, my dad was pretty mean in the way that he handled my addiction. Extremely mean. And physically, fistfights with my father. I mean, it was bad. So, all I can tell you is you got to get disciplined. You got to get disciplined. You got to love discipline. You've got to see us disciplining you, us elders in this ministry, as a gift from Yah, so that you don't stick the knife back in the electrical socket right there. Because guess what? You've been doing that all your life. And nobody else gave a crap as you did it. And you got electrocuted over and over and over. And everybody else just, whatever. She's going to do what she's going to do. And you never had the discipline the right way. We're disciplining you because we love you. Because the Father loves disciplines. Now, get your clothes on, you've got, at this point, 36 minutes. I will be in the truck at 8 o'clock, and if we leave at 8 o'clock on a 22-minute drive that it is, we should be there 8 minutes early. Now, here's what you need to realize. If I said be out there at 8 o'clock, when should you be out there? No, not at 8 o'clock. You should be out there 10 minutes early. Yeah, you should be standing at the truck waiting for me. You should be asking me for the keys so you can start the truck, get the air conditioner going, open the windows, get some air in there, get all your stuff in there, and be sitting in the seat with the GPS to take us over there because I haven't memorized and mastered the route yet. And that same thing that I just taught her about showing up at the job was the reason she was told, get on the calls 10 minutes early. Now, I'm giving a little bit of chesed, which they call mercy in Christianity. I'm giving that chesed, which is a better word because now you're not saying a goddess of mercy, but you're saying chesed. I'm giving that to Yana right now because Yana has been ill, but she was not on the call on time this morning. Okay, so I didn't go and rattle her cage yet because she's just getting here. She's just getting settled in. We're starting 2 hours earlier, and she's not feeling well. So the whole aspect of her coming with me in the morning over to that area and us being in business clothes and us being able to start to see businesses in that area until she gets a job, it's not happening yet. But it could be happening very quickly, depending on how quickly she can come out of this situation. Because if I got to drive over there, I may as well not drive back. I may as well start working in that area, which is why Fine Foods is 2.2 miles from Goodwill. And wherever she's going to get a position with, Ashley or wherever it's going to be, then it's got to be in that area. But before she gets that, she can be going over there and starting to be mentored in the field while I'm doing business and making things happen. So I will be, under normal circumstances, going there in business clothes and having that all happen. But right now, we're just adjusting. So she said not a schedule. She's got a schedule. She knows when to get up 10 minutes early on the line. She knows when all the calls are throughout an entire week and where she needs to be. That's her schedule. She knows when we do the intermittent fasting that the last meal we should be done eating before 7 o'clock, and we're not going to eat again until 11 a.m. the next day, so that we have a total of 11 plus 5 is 16 hours. Dr. Louis Ariaza says intermittent fasting, you should do 16 hours before you have the next meal. So we're eating and getting all our food done within an 8-hour window. We're sleeping in an 8-hour window. And we're intermittent fasting between 2 8-hour windows or 16 hours. That's a schedule. So she may say on the line and try to embarrass me that I haven't sat down with her and gave a schedule, but that's really not true. I've been very disciplined with when we are supposed to eat, when we are supposed to sleep, when we are supposed to get up and get the call going, when she's supposed to do the watering out front, when she's supposed to be doing the dishes, when she's supposed to be cooking. And now her work just got cut in half because Yana is to learn all the duties that she does as far as household chores. So now she has half the work that she had before because Yana's going to be doing it with her. And whatever job that we get for Yana is going to have to line up with whatever job she's got. It's got to be in the right community, and it's got to be in the right time slots. So that is the new schedule. That's the schedule. To put specific teeth in it, right now she works from 8:30 to 4:30. So I know when I got to leave at 8 o'clock, and I got to leave at 4 o'clock. I got a schedule. It's pretty easy for me to remember all of that. And I'm disciplined with it. And then I got a list of about 1,000 things that need to be done, and I'm not exaggerating. I have 1,000 things that could be done right now to better my businesses, to better my disposition in the marketplace ministry. Oh, and let me not forget, at 9:57 a.m., I'm teaching on a Zoom call a business broker group of leaders. So, you know, I already got that slipped in over my lunch hour, actually right before the lunch hour, that I'm going to be doing that training every day, 37 minutes, Monday through Friday. So there's a schedule. Hallelujah. So I'm just going to say it is Mind and Motivation time, Mind and Messiah Motivation time, and we are going to go into a series of motivational music, and what I'm going to do for Mind and Messiah Motivation is, instead of getting into all of that, we're just going to do, because it is now the crossover to the other Sukkots that are going on, we're going to stay in this realm of Sukkot. So I have a whole bunch of Sukkot music, and I have a 2-hour and 23-minute Sukkot message. So that's going to be your Mind and Messiah Motivation today, is I'm going to motivate you with this feast. And this is going to be really important for you to grab a hold of these things. I'm going to also put Jason on to do that Mind and Messiah Motivation, and he's a very popular rabbi, so he's going to talk some Jesus stuff, but he's a Messianic rabbi that's young and pretty on fire from what I can tell, and really scripturally accurate in most ways. So I'm going to start playing Jason through this Sukkot as the Mind and Messiah Motivation continues. He's going to be one of our key players here. I'm going to have a few other speakers speak on Sukkot as well from outside ministries, and that is to motivate you to teshuvah, to turn from your sin, to turn from that negative direction your life has been heading in, and go in the positive direction of the light, of the love, who is Abba Yah. Hallelujah.
סוכה ולולב לעם סגולם, יחד ירונו יישאו תהילה. אל ממצרים גאה לנו, דיברות קודשו השמיענו, אנא נחמות הקיפנו, לארבע רוחות מגדה ומעלה. סוכה ולולב לעם סגולה, יחד ירונו יישאו תהילה. סוכה ולולב לעם סגולה, יחד ירונו יישאו תהילה. וצמיחת קרן, אוי לדוד עבדך, בריחסנה לבן איש Aleinu Sukas Rachmin V'chayim V'shalom Rois Aleinu Sukas Rachmin V'chayim V'shalom Rois Aleinu Sukas Shalom Echad Sukas Rachmin V'chayim V'chayim V'shalom Rois Aleinu Sukas Roim Echad
Ay ay mi ar que se llore
de corei pesure ginu mi bein agoni une futsi sei no caneis hoy mi ar que se llore ay 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 une futsi sei no caneis une futsi sei no caneis une futsi sei no caneis mi ar que se llore יפה ותמה תורת אמא הנעימה יוכל להעמיק כי בסודך סודר אלוקים חיים עובדי צורך פועל תוך קרבי תמיד ידרשו אותך רבים חוקים ומצוות טובים את כל ליבות מלאיבים נאבים גם נשגבים וכפתית שפוצץ סלעים ורים אין דדיים יבוא בכל לב תורת אמת מפיכנו חיים ממי יין סוד אלוקים חיים יפה וסמו Toirot temimo aneimo Vini yuchal lehami Besoidei Soidei Elokim chayim Mipiel Yevorach kol Israel Mipiel Yevorach kol Israel En adir kashem Ein baruch Given amero Ein gedulot Katoira Ve'ein deutsche Yoke Yisroel Mipiel Yevorach kol Israel Mipiel Yevorach kol Israel Rai rai tri la 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 Maidam tri la 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 Maidai tri la 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 שיבת נפש תורת השם תמימה תורת השם תמימה תורת השם תמימה משיבת נפש עדות השם נאמונו מרגימה פסים עדות השם נתת לו ומה הוריד בידו ומה הוריד בידו שמלוכות הוריד בידו הוריד בידו הוריד בידו ושמחו יא בשמחת תורה אסור הסירה לכבוד התורה אסור הסירה לכבוד התורה מפס יקר הזקה וברה הזקה וברה מפס יקר הזקה וברה הזקה וברה אסור הסירה לכבוד התורה אסור הסירה לכבוד התורה מפס יקר הזקה וברה הזקה וברה מפס יקר הזקה וברה זקה לכבוד התורה אסור הסירה לכבוד התורה מפס יקר הזקה וברה הזקה וברה מפס יקר הזקה וברה הזקה וברה אסור הסירה לכבוד התורה אסור הסירה לכבוד התורה מפס יקר הזקה וברה הזקה וברה מפס יקר הזקה וברה Oy raboy say als macharos oy schachte mai besuesai oy mi mai nai hay shio oy schachte mai besuesai oy mi mai nai oy hay shio Hoy veyu isu asumaya Hoy vesu machtu bechagechu Hoy veyu isu asumaya Hoy vesu machtu bechagechu Hoy veyu isu asumaya Hoy vesu machtu bechagechu Veyu isu asumaya
Hey, podcast family, welcome to the John Maxwell Leadership Podcast, the podcast that adds value to leaders who will multiply value to others. My name is Mark Cole, and I'm excited today because we're going to talk about something that everyone has, but everyone wants more of it, and that's influence. See, John Maxwell says that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And if you're going to lead others, you need to gain influence every single day. So today, John's going to begin this two-part series on how to gain more influence. Then I and my co-host, Chris Godey, will be back to discuss John's lesson and offer some ways, some ideas, some experiences in which we have had so that you can apply these principles to your own leadership. As always, we have a free fill-in-the-blank worksheet that we call our bonus resource. If you would like to fill this out as you listen to John, please go to maxwellpodcast.com/game. Click the bonus resource button and then follow along with John. Now here is John C. Maxwell.
Let me ask you a question before I start this. How many of you would like to gain influence in your life, in the lives of others? Okay, have you got this? Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out almost in a sequential pattern how to gain influencers by sharing with you how influencers influence people. And we're going to take the word influence, and I'm going to take each one of those letters and I'm going to build off of it. For example, the letter I. Are you ready? Here we go. An influencer has, the letter I, integrity with people. Now, you see, the reason I'm building the lesson the way that I am off of each letter is by the time I'm done, you will be able to know all 10 points without ever looking back at your notes, because each letter will represent the next point. And an influencer has integrity with people. Emerson was right. If we live truly, we shall truly live. I just recently read an article where they interviewed 1,300 executives, of which they asked the executives to list 5 things that they expected in people that were going up the ladder in their company. Interestingly enough, in all 1,300 of them, integrity was in all 1,300 of them. In other words, I mean, they did this all across the country, and they said, give me 5, and in that 5 somewhere, integrity was in there. In other words, every executive says you've got to have integrity or you're never going to climb this ladder. Now, watch this. What's really interesting is it was in the top 5 with 100% of the 1,300 executives. Watch this. 71% of them listed at number 1. 71% of the executives across America said the number 1 issue of anybody that's going to climb this ladder is the issue of integrity. That's why I have in your notes, do you see it? In the business world, it's acceptable to make mistakes, to lay eggs. Big ones, I've majored in those. But the Center for Creative Research, in a significant study, learned that one thing that sounds the death knell for those who aspire to the top rung of the ladder is betraying a trust. Virtually anything else can be overcome over a period of time, but once trust is betrayed, moving to the top of the ladder is out of the question. It is always easy to do right when you know ahead of time what you stand for. I want you to write that in your notes somewhere, would you please? It is always easy to do right when you know ahead of time what you stand for. In other words, integrity is not an issue that puts pressure on us in a crisis if we always settled the issue before the crisis. The only time we have pressure on an integrity issue is when we never settled the issue before the crisis came. I'll read it again. It is always easy to do right when you know ahead of time what you stand for. That is so key. In other words, integrity, a lot of times I've heard people tell me, they say, John, a crisis makes the character. No, it doesn't. It just reveals the character. Character's already made. I don't know what you are, but I'll tell you whatever you are, you already are. And when the old pressure comes and it hits you, I promise you what'll squeeze out of you is what you already determined before that crisis ever came. Integrity, number 1 of all influences. The letter N in the word integrity, or in influence, well, it's also an integrity, come to think about it. The letter N in the word influence stands for an influencer nurtures people. Let's talk about nurturing for a moment. Influencers have the ability to nurture others. The length and breadth of our influence upon others depends on the depth of our concern for others. I want you to know, many leaders love their position more than their people. And when that happens, leaders soon lose their position. Because you know what happens? The people can tell if you really love them or not. Charles Bukowski was exactly right. Of course it's possible to love a human being if you don't know them too long. Huh? And haven't we seen that's what Charlie Brown said, I love mankind. It's people I can't stand. I heard this the other day of a mother who said, I just took my parents back to the airport. They had been visiting me for a few days. I just dropped them off at the airport. She said they leave tomorrow. or when Narvaez, the Spanish patriot, was dying, the father confessor came into Narvaez and asked him this question about his relationships, and he said, have you forgiven all of your enemies? And he looked kind of astonished. He said, oh, Father, he said, I have no enemies. He said, I have shot them all. already wiped them out. Nurturing, note this, few leaders love their people more than their position, and when that happens, leaders strengthen their position. Notes on nurturing, letter A. Nurturing people does not mean needing people. So when I talk about a nurturing atmosphere of a leader, I'm not talking about you need them, you have to have, that's codependency, that's unhealthy. And I've said many times, you've heard me say this, you can't lead people if you need people. Okay, letter B. Nurturing people does mean commitment to people. What nurturing means is Not that I need them, but that I'm committed to them. And love will find a way, but indifference will always find an excuse in relationships. Always has, always will. Letter C. Nurturing people does mean loving people. Nurturing people does mean loving people. Henry Drummond. You will find as you look back upon your life that the moments when you have really lived are the moments when you have done things in a spirit of love. And letter D, nurturing people does mean lifting people to a higher level. Now that's what I'm speaking about, nurturing, an atmosphere that allows people to grow. Influencers, we've learned two things about an influencer. An influencer does two things. One, has integrity with people. Number two, nurtures people. Okay, you ready for the F? An influencer has faith in people. An influencer has faith in people. They have a high belief system in the people that are around them. Every man is entitled to be valued at his very best moments. I learned a long time ago, assets make things possible and people make things happen. And you can have all the assets in the world, but if you don't have the people around you and the belief in them, then you're going to be in trouble. Okay. In leading others, there are three feelings that we cannot possess. One is fear, two is dislike, and three is contempt. If we are afraid of people, we cannot handle them. If we dislike people, we shouldn't lead them. And if we look down on people, we will not respect them. How true that is. Les Giblin, an authority on human relations, says that our actions must be genuine. You can't make the other fellow feel important in your presence if you secretly feel that he's a nobody. Now let's talk about that for just a second, because what I find is a lot of people come to me, and because they're not good on the inside, they're not right on the inside, they have results that they don't care for and that kind of confound them. They'll come to me and they'll say, John, I'm doing this, I'm going through these motions or I'm taking these actions, and yet I'm not getting the outcome. Here's what I usually find. If you're doing things right on the outside, but you're not getting the right results, it's because there's something wrong on the inside. And what you're doing is you're sending signals to people that are not backing your words. And they can read it. They can intuitively feel it. And they know when you really are sincere. And they know when you're like the expression that I hate is fake it till you make it. What I say is be remade. Quit faking it. Because what happens is that's where we lack not only integrity, but that's what also happens is people can tell when you really do believe in them. There's a whole new level that people rise to once they understand that you truly do believe in them. And I have found in my life that the reason I get such good positive results from people is because I believe people have great value. I respect them highly. I believe that they want to contribute to life, and they can just read that in me. It just bleeds through, and so therefore they respond accordingly. So that's why we've got to always go on the inside. Remember this, whenever there are outside problems, it's because there's something on the inside that's not right. And it's always an inside issue. It's very, very seldom an outside issue. I learned a long time ago, you get the inside right, the outside comes out fine. But the inside has to be right. And faith in people, true faith and belief in people, is one of the real essentials in influencing. Okay, the letter L. An influencer listens to people. And I want to talk to you a little bit about listening because it's so key in leadership and influence. Paul Tillich said that the first duty of love is to listen. So this is some good stuff on listening. And in your notes here, I have a quiz for you to take. Are you a good listener? Number one, do I allow the speaker to finish without interrupting? Just go ahead and help yourself. Number two, do I listen between the lines for the subtext? In other words, for what really they're saying. Number three, do I actively try to retain important facts? Number four, when writing a message, do I listen for and set down the key facts and phrases in order to get everything right? Number six, do I avoid getting hostile or agitated when I disagree with the speaker? Don't worry, I'm not going to ask for scores. I can tell some of you are already breaking the records. Number seven, do I tune out distractions when listening? Or maybe a better way to put that, am I a distraction? when listening. Number 8, do I make an effort to seem interested in what the other person is saying? Those are good questions, aren't they? 8 of them. Just kind of help you on your listening checkup. Okay, good stuff.
Hey, welcome back. As John was teaching today, I thought of Ken Blanchard's quote. He says, the key to successful leadership today is influence, not authority. And so today, Chris, as you and I get to unpack this powerful word that John has really popularized in his definition of leadership. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And here we are now. John's going to take us on a 2-week journey on the acrostic of influence. And I tell you, just in the first 4 points, I'm sitting here and going, man, I've got a lot of work to do. I've been with John for 21 years, but I've got a lot of work to do. And here we go. That's what the point of the podcast is.
It, right?
Work to do.
I think you and I probably learn as much as some of our listeners out there do by just going through this together with our team and this content. The first thing I thought about is, I'm extremely passionate about the 5 levels of leadership is what we call it now, but back when John created it in Developing the Leader Within You, the chapter was, or the model was, the 5 levels of influence. Yeah. And as I thought about what he was talking about right here, there's so many competencies that fit into that model. And I, as well as you, were like, I got some work to do. The first thing I want to talk about is, as we jump in, is I hope you, maybe if you're driving, don't do it while you're driving, but I hope you go back and listen and write down what John said, which was, it's always easy to do right ahead of time when you know what you stand for. And we're going to jump in and talk about this first one in integrity. And I wrote that down as I was sitting here and we were listening to it, because I think you and I have seen, and many people that are listening have seen, many leaders that don't have integrity, that have incredible talent, kind of fizzle out. And John even says, man, 71% of the executives in a survey said, man, one of the biggest issues of climbing the ladder is having integrity if you want to do it. And then if you're going to fall short, it's because you don't have integrity. Man, you've seen a lot of leaders, organizations around the world with John, but also internally. Talk a little bit about the importance of that word for you in leadership and even in your leaders, and what that looks like around the John Maxwell enterprise.
So I love this, and truly we could forget that John covered 3 other points, and we could camp out right here on integrity. I think it's so important. And most of you in podcast land know I've had 2 great opportunities to work for 2 great leaders, my father and then John Maxwell, and kind of was tasked or picked to carry the legacy of both. And one, I focused a lot more on external leadership, image, what people thought of me in my younger attempt to lead, and then more importantly recently to focus on the inside. And I'll come back to that because I have a resource I want to point everybody to in just a moment. But I'm sitting here with integrity, and I do think it comes into having the foresight of knowing what you want to be known for and then leading to that point.
That's a good point, yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you and I love sports. We're not big Tom Brady fans, but that's another conversation. Recently in the playoffs, I was watching Tom Brady, the Buccaneers, pick apart yet another team. I won't say them for some of our friends and podcast family from that city. But the commentators were talking about, they had an interview that week with Tom Brady, and he said, I always know where I'm going to throw the ball before I touch it. So he previews the defense. He knows the game plan of what he called in the huddle. He may make some adjustments, but he already knows where he's going with the ball before he says hike, and the center puts it in his hands. Now, let's take that analogy from one of the greatest, if not the greatest. Yes, you heard me say that. One of the greatest in his profession of football. He knows where he's going to throw it before he touches the ball. What if we as leaders knew what kind of leader we wanted to be before we started leading? And as we started leading? Before we caught the ball, got the ball for the next assignment, what if we already envisioned the integrity with which we wanted to lead and how we wanted to be perceived? So coming back to that, Chris, for me, again, 2 opportunities to lead. It's been a much more sustainable and less pressurized journey to know how I wanted to lead from the inside on this second opportunity than it was on the first opportunity, where I was figuring it out as we go. There was no integrity on the first one. It is trying to build it completely on integrity the second one. So how does a leader do that?
Yeah.
I'll take you to a book that I read before my first opportunity and a book I read before my second opportunity. It's the first John Maxwell book that I read. Happened to have it with me in the studio
Look at
today,
that.
which is Developing the Leader Within You. This is, in my opinion, we all have our favorites out of John's 86 books. In my opinion, this is the most impacting book of any leader that is taking on a new assignment. And in my opinion, this book is all about the inside of leadership, the inside of a leader, and therefore it's about integrity. And I just couldn't pass this up by looking at all of you at the beginning of 2022 and saying, when is the last time you've read this book? Yeah. And if you haven't read this book, to go, what? You don't even know John Maxwell if you haven't read this book, because really Developing the Leader Within You 2.0 is one of John's favorite books. And Chris, as you know, we have a digital product along this book. It's John teaching 10 lessons, 15 to 20 minutes, fill in the blank notes. It's stuff you can pass on to your team. It's a digital product. And Jake, I want to give them a discount to take advantage of that. We'll give you a 20% discount. Jake, make that happen. And you can go to the show notes, and we'll have the link there. And when you go to that link, obviously put in the keyword podcast, and we'll give you a 20% discount. But again, back to this idea of integrity. I really do believe, I'm so glad John started with this, because again, I started, this is my first Maxwell book. I read it, I consumed it, I loved it, forgot about it. And this time, Chris, I read this, if not once every year, once every 2 years. I consume it. I teach from it all the time. And the person that I teach the most about this content is myself.
I love it.
Because it's who we are.
Yeah, and if you're unfamiliar with the 5 levels of influence I mentioned, man, it is in the first chapter of that book right there. And as Mark mentioned, as you begin to think about your leadership journey and where you want to go, not only personally, but even just professionally in the organization, man, that integrity's got to be there. And I love what you talked about with Tom Brady, which for both of us and some of our team members is not sitting well for us to talk about this on a podcast. But the problems that he encounters after the snap of the ball do not matter to him.
No.
Because if you have integrity, you're equipped for the challenges ahead. You know the decisions you're going to make. And leaders, we're going to face challenges.
Yeah.
We know that. We've all been through 24 months of challenges. There have been challenges before that. There will be challenges ahead of us.
Let me say one more thing on that, because we talked about sports. We're obviously in a leadership podcast, business podcast. John tells the story of one of the most scariest times he's ever traveled on a plane, and he got down, and right as they were landing, the wind shear hit. That's happened to a lot of us. I can tell you my 1 or 2 times of losing everything I had in an experience like that. He said that plane popped on the ground because the wind shear popped it, and immediately that pilot pulled it back up. When they got off, he hugged the pilot, and he said, man, how did you figure out? How did you know? When did you make the decision to pull that back up? He said, I made that decision 20 years ago. In training, I learned over and over again, wind shear hits, it's safer for a plane in the air than on the ground in a bunch of chaotic wind. Good. And so we as leaders, hey, make the decision today what you're going to do in the next challenge. For us, 2020, infamous leading through COVID, we made a decision many, many years ago, we're going to value people. So when COVID hit, we made all of our decisions not based on how many millions was at risk, how many millions could be lost, on how many lives could be impacted and added value to by making the decision this way or that way. And we made that decision a long time ago. So people say, man, when did you make the decision to cancel IMC, a $6 million risk decision that we made? Oh, we made that years ago when we decided we were going to add value to people.
Yep. You know, before we move on real quick, because to your point, we could talk about this first topic the whole time. One of the things in addition to making decisions and solving problems, one of the things that John talked about in there, I don't want you to miss this, is that when you lead with integrity, you have that trust. And as we think about our engagement level in organizations, as we think about our teams being engaged, one of the things that really stands out to me is that 81% of team members say that their leader is why they're engaged, but the reason why they're engaged is because they trust their leader.
Yeah.
The only way they're going to trust you, the only way we're going to trust each other, peer-to-peer leader, is that if we have integrity and we live out that on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Well, let me move on. There's a couple more points you and I talked about, and that I just want to go into. John talks about an influencer nurtures people. Now, when we hear the word nurturing, we don't necessarily think of a leader right away, do we? Right?
Yeah.
This is we use the word soft, and that may come across to you as, I don't want to be a nurturing leader. It's not easy, by the way. It may be soft, but it is not easy. And John goes on to say, man, it does mean a commitment to your people. It does mean loving your people. And I will tell you this, that as long as you and I have worked together and worked with John, there is no doubt that he nurtures as a leader to those that are on his team and in his influence. Talk a little bit about, from your perspective as a leader, the importance of that. Again, I'm air hashtagging right here, nurturing of people.
You got it. First of all, let me say this to all you podcast listeners. Yeah. You need to jump on YouTube and kind of check out the Maxwell Leadership Podcast. YouTube search it, and you'll find us. You've got to see how nurturing it feels to see Chris go to use in a
pink shirt, but it's February.
It's
right?
February.
So we're
Happy Valentine's Day to you, Chris.
Right.
So this has been more pronounced to me in John Maxwell's leadership over the last 2 or 3 years than at any other time. I wouldn't have started 21 years ago and said, man, that John Maxwell, he's a nurturing leader.
Right.
Now, he's always been a valuing people, loves everybody. Everybody feels welcome. You don't work for me, you work with me. He says nurturing things in his sleep. I mean, he's just great at it. But it has really become obvious to me, Chris, over the last 3 years when he first found his word for the year to be Father. And there is this pride. John wrote me a card over the holidays. He in his year-end review, he kind of writes cards based on impact moments that he had. He then pulls out a note card right in the impact moment and writes a thank you note. It's a brilliant idea. I'm going to teach on it in a podcast because I'm going to steal it because it's a great idea. I got one of those, and I just opened it this weekend. Been traveling, just opened my mail, and had this thing from John, and he said, my most proud thing I've done this year is to watch you do your thing. He said, of all the things that we've accomplished, and 2021 was a great year for all of us, Chris, including you and your team. He said, of all the things I'm proud of all the things that just made me swell with pride and thanksgiving, it was watching you lead to the next level. Now, I don't believe those were just nice words. I think that was the nurturing father side of John Maxwell. This was real pronounced to me just an hour before walking in the studio. John and I are doing a consulting arrangement with a group from Mexico, Zifra, powerful leaders. These young people are fired up, and they're asking these questions of John and I. And John's going to throw one or two of them my way, and so I'm ready, and I go gangbusters with my answers. I mean, I'm just like this, my YouTube family, I'm just like this. I mean, I'm fired up, ready to go. And John just kind of pauses, and there's this love and this thing, and you're going, number one, his answers are always good, but number one, you don't even have to answer correctly. I just feel a warm embrace right now. The one was asking, how do I stop failing and disappointing people around me? And I've got 3 reasons and why passion is going to do. And John just slows down, and it's less about his words than it is about his demeanor. And leaders, if I could help you, and I could help me, if I could help me right here, if you will nurture with your persona, with your attitude, with your presentation, it'll go further and last longer than your wise, passionate words. And I'm still learning that. I'm not a nurturing leader. I have this hard charge. If I can fire you up, we're going to get it done. And John just goes, man, if I can make you believe in yourself, you're going to get it done.
And when you were just talking about that, I was like, man, I know that I tied that to a comment he made. And even in your show notes here, he says nurturing people does mean lifting people to a higher level, right? There's a lot of complexity that comes to lifting your people to a higher level. But even in just that illustration of him answering that question by slowing down and understanding, hey, you're probably not you're not always going to get approval from people. You're not going to make them happy and then just talk through that from a demeanor. You lift people up.
Yeah, and let me say this, in leadership, and I'm not talking to you as a mom over your family or a dad working through a troubled teen. I'm talking about in leadership, and that has elements of leadership. There's a big difference in nurturing and enabling.
Yes.
And many leaders feel like if I nurture, then I am enabling you or empowering you to less than. Yeah. And that's not true. Back to your quote of John. Nurturing is continuing to lift them to a higher level, but it's not kicking them in the butt to do it. It's lifting them from the heart to do it.
Totally agree. Hey, one thing I thought about here as well, when John talks about that nurturing does mean loving people, one of the things that you and I are extremely excited about is our League of Extraordinary Leaders. And Joel Manby, a powerful executive in the corporate world, has actually partnered with us and just done off of his book, a digital content called Love Works. And we went back and forth and we said, do we include that word in the title? And we said, man, absolutely we have to, because that's just part of leading people. And so he puts together 7 principles of better way to lead and to love your people. And so that's in the show notes. There's a link there. That's coming out in February. Again,
and didn't you say there's like 8 components that he does?
There's 9. There's 9 video sessions, but 7 principles.
Yep.
Got to check it out. It'll go along with my pink shirt celebrating Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. Love does work. Love works at work, and love will work in your relationship. So proud of that. So thank you for mentioning that.
Absolutely. Last point here, and we're going to wrap it up, but this is probably something we need to talk about before we wrap up. We were talking right before we got on the air here, and Jared Cagle, an incredible part of our team, was saying, hey, that whole nurturing, and then John's last point of to being able to listen to people, to gain influence, or to be an influencer, man, there's such a direct connection. And here's what I was thinking about. To validate his point was you just gave us an example of John sitting on that phone call when you guys are mentoring and consulting with this organization. And, man, he's just sitting there listening, and he's soaking it all up. And he says in here, he gives us, I think there's 8 questions to do a little self-assessment. By the way, I don't know about you, but the longer we have led, the longer we've been around, the more unaware we become of our listening skills. Now, if Stephanie and Sarah, our spouses, were here, we would lose the mics right here, and we would talk a lot about them, knowing that we hear them, we don't really listen to them.
We would actually have a technical glitch because Jake would help us out right here and cut it off.
Yeah, but I just want to get transparent here for a minute, and I want to say, man, these questions are powerful, and you and I admitted that we learned a lot from these lessons from John, even in our leadership and being around for John over 20 years. There's 8 here. I have an answer of which one I struggle with the most, but I'd love to hear from you. When you look through this, I want you to talk a little bit about the 2 that you struggle with and why.
So only 2?
Yeah. Only because you and I narrowed them down from 8 to 6, and I got to the 2.
Probably, Chris, as I look at the 8, and there really are several that we talked about pre-recording, but do I repeat? It's number 5 in the list in your show notes. And again, let me challenge all of you watching or listening. You want to go get these show notes that our team prepares for you. It'll help you consume the content better. It'll help you share the content with others. But number 5 in the notes says, do I repeat the details of an interview or a conversation in order to get everything right? And I can tell you, that's not even 25% of the time. 1 in 4 times, I'm not sitting here repeating it to make sure I got it, because it seems like such a waste of time. We're adults. Number 1, I feel like I insult your intelligence if I go, now what I heard
active
you
listening,
say
like we all learned,
is,
right?
And we've heard active listening, but in a professional setting and all that, and even in a personal setting, back to if Sarah and Stephanie were here. But I really don't do that. And I don't do that well, and what happens many, many times is I am responding to my interpretation, not to their intention.
That's good.
And I really do challenge myself after listening to this and after you asking this question and us agreeing to have this vulnerable conversation here. I really do think that repeating back before responding, my challenge is twofold. 1 is I think I insult your intelligence.
Yeah.
2, I think that it wastes time, and I don't have much time.
Right. Get on with it.
But 3, I think that I will forget my wonderful response on the fly. And I probably need to forget some of my wonderful responses on the fly, because half of them feel like they were on the fly.
Yeah.
And so I think by repeating it before I form an answer, because I'm telling you, halfway through your question, I'm already forming the answer to what I think you're saying. And every leader does that. And if you don't, you do too. I'm just telling you.
They're just not admitting it.
Halfway through your question, I'm forming my answer. And if I will wait to form my answer when I make sure that we are settled on your point or your question, I promise you my response will be better, more relevant, and you will accept it more because I listened and repeated back.
Yeah, that's
the
good.
second one would be number 6. Do I avoid getting hostile or agitated when I disagree with the speaker? And I did that. I had to pick that one because you mentioned Stephanie being in the studio with me. Because when I know that I'm right, which is all the time, when I am confident that I am right and I can't move people enough, it's not that I disrespect their answer, their position, or how much love I have for them. It's I disrespect how much time that it's going to take for us to get on the agreement. It's not fair. It's not right. It's terrible. It's confession time. I'm done. I need to go see my pastor or my priest, whatever. I got to go get some help right here.
Well, I'm sorry, Mark. We ran out of time. I can't share mine after that. So we're good. No, I appreciate you sharing that, because I think so many of us, each of these 8, right, if we're being honest with ourselves, we need to go to work on these. And remember, we're talking about how do we gain influence. And John says, here's 8 great questions around listening. For me, it's really the second one, which is, do I listen between the lines for the subtext?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I'll take at face value what is being said. I'm very logical, kind of very concrete. And what are they trying to tell me? Am I listening in a way to be curious enough to understand their side of their perspective of where it's coming from? Because we would probably communicate it a little bit differently, and I don't think I do a good enough job with that. And so Mark and I were just convicted by these questions, and so we wanted to share that with our listeners. Man, we're so grateful. I'm going to throw it back to you to let you wrap us up and finish today's lesson.
Well, here's the standout statement that we want to leave you with today. The best way to influence people is to value them. And we're talking about influence, 4 points this week, 6 points next week. And we're really wanting to dig deeper into this concept. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So how do we influence? And the best way to influence is start by valuing people. Start by taking that moment. There's a very relevant episode that we've done that I want to direct you to. It's in your show notes. It's called Your Influence Inventory. Do a checkup. Go back and listen to that podcast this week and do a checkup on how you're doing in your influence quotient and how you can grow that and become more influential. I'm reminded of a listener comment that we got. This is incredible, from Laura. Laura talked about the episode goal conscious versus growth conscious. She said we can choose to go back towards safety or forward toward growth. Today, I choose to get better and grow in every area of my life. Sustainable development is the pathway to the future we want for all. So today, I will start reading my book, Small Wins, Small Steps Help Us Achieve Our Goals. Let's focus on growth, and everything else will fall in place. If you know Laura, and she's a listener to the podcast, ask her if she's still reading that book. Thank you, Laura. Thanks, all of you. Hey, Chris, can't wait for next week.
Yeah.
I love this journey of influence. I love this journey of leadership. It's Valentine's Day, so there's a lot of love. We love all of you that watch us on YouTube, all of us that listen, and we love you even more, if that's possible. We love you even more when you send us a comment. Let us know how we're doing. We love you even more when you forward this podcast to others so that they too can be impacted. Until next week, let's listen, let's learn, let's love, then let's lead.
ברוך אתה אדוני Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvah Yisod, v'tzivonu nikro esameh. Hallelujah, love Adonai, hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Ishem Adonai mevoda, me'ata ve'adelu, ממזרח שמש עד מבוא, מהולל שם אדוני, למה כל גויים אדוני, על השמיים כבודו. Ika Adonai Eloheinu Amakbid Hashamogen Amashbid בשמיים ובארץ מבקרים מעפר דם וישפוט יורים I love the love of Shivi, B'tzeis Yisrael mitzrayim be'eis Yaakov me'amloyim Ayisayu dalel God Yisrael Am shelo Yisrael Hayam erov Hayonos Hayam Yisrael me'ofoy Leilai Holy Morocco, Kailim Gabba, boys given eight, so I didn't like, Malesa, Yavam King, so no Savaya, didn't say my own. Heaven, oh, didn't get to Hailing Gabba, boys given eight, so If they are dying for the honest, if they Eloi Hayakoi,
Welcome to the John Maxwell Leadership Podcast, the podcast that adds value to leaders who multiplies value to others. My name is Mark Cole, and today we are finishing our series on how to gain influence. Today in part 2, John Maxwell is going to teach you 6 more ways to grow your influence as a leader. Then after John's lesson, I and my co-host Chris Godey will be back to discuss John's lesson and other ways for you to apply these principles to your leadership. If you would like to download our bonus resource, which is a fill-in-the-blank worksheet from John's lesson, please go to maxwellpodcast.com/gain. Click the bonus resource button and fill in the blanks as Dr. John Maxwell teaches. Here is John.
The letter U. Are you ready for that one? An influencer understands people. An influencer understands people. In the book Climbing the Executive Ladder is this paragraph. Few things will pay you bigger dividends than the time and trouble you take to understand people. Almost nothing will add more to your stature as an executive or a person. Nothing will give you a greater satisfaction or bring you more happiness. To understand the mind of a person, look at what he has already achieved, or she has. To understand the heart of a person, look at what he or she has dreams of becoming. So those are the 2 things. To search their mind, look at what they're achieving. To search their heart, look what they're dreaming about. Norman Wright, who's a wonderful friend of mine, says that there are 2 basic reasons why relationships fail. Number 1 is fear, which causes us to erect barriers. And number 2 is selfishness, which causes us to obviously focus on ourselves instead of others. And if either one of those are there, understanding cannot materialize. 3 vital qualities that enable us to develop lasting understanding relationships. Number 1 is genuineness. Enables us to be ourselves without a facade. Number 2 is non-possessive love. It enables us to accept a person as they are. Number 3 is empathy, which enables us to feel with that other person. So true, isn't it? Number 6, an influencer. Let me say something about the first 5 first before I go to 6. The first 5, integrity with people, nurturing people, faith in people, listening to people, and understanding people. The first 5 deals with your attitude. Go to the bank on this. All 5 of these things are certainly attainable and achievable, and they're basically attitude. They're seeds of attitude. The last 5 steps now I'm going to give you an influence deal with action steps. And again, you can see how this is flowing. You can see how this is building. It starts with integrity, then nurturing, then faith, then listening, then understanding. Number 6, an influencer, letter E, enlarges people. In other words, the great influencers, people become bigger because of them. In fact, one of the greatest ways to attest your ability as a leader is to look around the people that have been around you and ask a very simple question. are they growing? Are they a bigger person today, or are they a smaller person today? Now, very simple. The question is, how do you grow an organization? It's very simple. You grow people. How many times have I said that? You grow people. Once you grow people, you grow an organization. But how do you grow people? You grow yourself. And that's where the key is. The moment that you grow yourself, then you can grow the people that are around you. Until that happens, you can't enlarge people. And Alan Loy McGinnis, I don't know if you've ever read any of his stuff, but he has some good books on relationships. Okay, you've read it, I can see. Okay. Alan Loy McGinnis says, there is no more noble occupation in the world than to assist another human being to help someone succeed. I believe that. As a leader, the moment that you begin to add value to others, as a leader, it will incredibly change your life. Are you building your business for people to add value to you? Or are you building your business to add value to people? I many times confronted pastors with that issue. Are you going in and mobilizing people to use their gifts in the church so that it helps you in the church? Or are you going in there and helping them mobilize their gifts so it can help them? Here's what I learned a long time ago. If you do it to help you, it'll be short-lived. Because sooner or later, people will understand what your motivation is, and they'll give up on you. But if you do it to help them, then you'll never get tired of doing it. In fact, let me tell you the difference. If you do it to add value to others, what happens is, when they come alongside of you, if you do it to add value with others, they'll always come back and add value to you. But the moment you try to add value to yourself, they'll begin to feel being used. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Enlarges people. Number 7. The letter N in the word influence. An influencer navigates for people. And I want to talk to you now about problem solving. I want to talk to you a little bit about mentoring, just a little bit here. In the little bit of whitewater rafting I've done, one of the things I've always found to be interesting is the person that navigates for us. There are a couple things that I know about them. And the fact that before they ever let you get on that water, they tell you very, very earnestly that when they say paddle, you paddle. When they say bail, you bail. And don't turn around and say, well, I have a question, or I have a suggestion that I think, because you're going down that water very, very fast. And basically they just say, when I say it, do it. Okay, kind of instant obedience. The second thing I've noticed about them, though, is on the roughest rivers that we've taken, I mean the real ones, the real white-knuckle trips, we pull over a lot of times, because what we do is we pull over to the side and we walk around and climb a mountain or something and look at the river ahead of us. And I'll say, let me show you what you're going to face here pretty soon. This is a very dangerous little whirlpool here. Yeah. That's right. That's when you say, well, if it's that dangerous, I'll meet you over on the other side. You know what I mean? After you've navigated that, would you mind pulling right over there? I think I'll do a little barbecue while I'm waiting on you. Yeah. But what they do is they show you ahead of time what the problems you're going to face, so that not only they have your attention, so that everybody understands what and you know what they do? They kind of map out a strategy. Now, when I'm talking about navigating for people, I'm not talking about doing their work. I'm not talking about not letting them have responsibility. What I am talking about, though, is a leader always sees the problem before anyone else. Can I tell you something? If everybody around you sees the problem before you, you ain't the leader. Now, let me tell you something else. You not only see the problem first, you solve the problem. In fact, basically, my leadership style is I see it before anyone else, already solve it, and so when I can show it to everybody else before they panic, I say, and here's how we're going to fix it. So when I'm talking about navigating for people, what I'm talking about is you come alongside of them, and you're to take them through rough territory. You're to take them on some heights that they cannot climb on their own. And if you're to do all those things, you really have to have a lay of the land. You have to have an understanding. You have to become a problem solver. You have to be able to share the problem with the people, but also share what the solutions are going to be. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about bringing somebody alongside of you, navigating for you. Now, what becomes frustrating about that is this. You can always make the trip faster on your own. Always remember that. Whenever a guide decides to take a party, whether it's mountain climbing or down a river or on a hike into the wilderness, whenever a guide decides to take a party with him or with her, he or she understands very quickly that the trip will be a lot more slow. Thoreau was exactly right. He said, the man who goes alone can start the day, but he who travels with another must wait until the other is ready. That's one of the reasons why many people, many leaders fail to develop leaders. Because they say, well, I could just do it quicker myself. Can I tell you, that's not your goal to do it quicker yourself. Your goal isn't to be done first. Your goal is when you cross the finish line, to have somebody with you. And so therefore what you do is you include, bring in, bring around. I was listening to 60 Minutes. You probably heard this maybe 3 or 4 Sunday nights ago. Mike Wallace was interviewing the guide that survived. I think 2 guides died. Maybe 2 or 3 other people died on Mount Everest climb. It was a very interesting interview. I took notes. In fact, I developed a whole lesson out of it. You know, it's just amazing what you can learn if you've got a legal pad ready. And the guide said a couple of very interesting things in this interview. Mike Wallace asked him, he said, do you think the 2 guides would have died if they wouldn't have had the party with them? And the guide said, oh, of course not. He said, those guides, both those guides, have been on this trip so many times. He said, they died because the other people were their responsibility. And I thought, what a great picture of leadership. What an incredible picture of leadership. And then Mike Wallace asked another question. Oh, this is a great one. He said, this is the kind of thing that's a lesson. It's just a great interview. Here we go. Mike Wallace looked at him and said, well, let me ask you another question. If you got all this struggle and all this weather and all this danger, he said, why do you try to go to the top of Mount Everest? And the guy looked at him and he just smiled and kind of leaned back in his chair with this, I know something you don't know. And he said to Mike Wallace, he said, it's obvious you've never been to the top. Huh? He said, only people at base camp ask that question. Once you've been to the top, you'll never ask that question again. Isn't that a great story? Huh? Okay. Navigating for people. I think I've done enough on that. Let's go to C, okay? In the word influence. An influencer connects with people. And I love the word connection. I love it. A tremendous quote here. The easiest kind of relationship for me is with 10,000 people. The hardest is with one. Now, what I'm saying is in the area of connecting with people, you never can connect with mass. You always connect with the person. You always connect with the individual. And influencers have the ability to connect. Connecting with people is the missing link with many who are in leadership positions. And let me tell you why it's the missing link. Most people in leadership positions believe, hang on, I'm going to tell you something, that if I can teach this principle, I want to tell you something, your whole day will be worth it. Here it is. People in leadership positions assume that it's the responsibility of people below them to connect with them. Major error. Major mistake. They say, well, wait a minute, I'm the leader. Let them come to me. I mean, I've got this position. I'm waiting. Hey, I'm here. Hey, they know where I am. They could have called me. They could have got on the phone. My goodness sakes. Don't they know who I am? Don't they know where I am? Don't they know? They know how to find me. See, people in leadership positions, many times they make a great mistake thinking it's the responsibility of people below them to connect. It is not, never has been. It's our responsibility as the leader to connect with them first. And why is connecting so important? Because connecting with people means that we find their agenda first. Connect by pouring yourself into others. Oh, this is fun, isn't it? The letter E. An influencer, number 9, empowers people. An influencer has the ability to empower people. Craig said it right. No matter how much work you can do, no matter how engaging your personality may be, you will not advance far in business if you cannot work through others. Enlarging a person deals with their individual growth, and empowering a person deals with the organizational growth. The whole ability to empower others is a tremendous, tremendous asset that influencers use very well. Now, I wanted to kind of define empowerment. It's used a lot today. It's a very popular word. Let me kind of define what I think empowerment is. It's in your notes, so it's all right there. Empowerment means to me seeing the potential of an individual, saying encouraging, empowering words to that person, sharing your power and position and influence with them, and showing to others your belief in and power given to that person. And number 4, showing others your belief in them. That is so key. If you really want to help empower a person, don't tell a person yourself that you think they can do a good job. You get the friends and the family around that person, and you begin to build them up in front of their friends and their family. It's the greatest way to empower. Yesterday I was teaching a lesson, another lesson. It was on 4 approaches to leadership, and I was talking about different kind of approaches that leaders use. And one of the approaches that I talked about that leaders use is what I call the human assets approach. In other words, there are some people that use the box approach or the job description approach, and some of them will use the expertise or the target approach. But I talked about one of the 4 I talked about was the human assets approach, of which when I was speaking to the group yesterday afternoon, I shared with them that is how I basically, not all the time, but probably 70% of the time, I lead. I lead through empowerment. I lead through a high belief in people, which allows me to emotionally connect with them, which allows me to share glory with them. In fact, one of my most fun things doing anymore is going to meetings with Enjoy and sitting at a table and watching 90% of the people in that room take the ball and run with it, and I just sit there and kind of rah, and that's great, and that's wonderful, and boy, I'm glad we're doing that, and that's exciting. That's the process of empowerment, getting people to believe in themselves. Now, this is a classic illustration. The letter R stands for reproduces other people. Reproduces other people. When you influence a child, you influence a life. When you influence a parent, you influence a family. When you influence a worker, you influence the company. But when you influence a leader, you influence everyone who looks to him or her for leadership. I want to tell you something. The people in your group, if you could see them as God sees them, and if you could see them as a leader sees them, you would be so amazed at the potential of the people in your group. See, I've learned a long time ago that if you believe high in people and you see potential in people, there are some that will disappoint you, but they are such a small minority compared to those who will help take you to the top. And I used to tell pastors all the time, there's gold in them, their pews. And there's gold in them, their groups you got. I'm telling you, there really are. Now, what happens is this, they have never unearthed it. Do you realize 90% of the people that walk around, 90% of the people that walk around don't even know what they've got inside themselves? In other words, here's what you got to understand about a leader. And I'm going to talk to you about this just for a second, then I'm going to close this baby up. Here's what I believe. As you walk through the crowd and you walk slowly through the lives of people, you've got to see them, but you've got to see beyond them. You've got to see what they are and what they can contribute and what value they really have. Now, here's what I believe. I believe as you walk with people, your agenda should never be just to see the person. You ought to see the person that they influence. You ought to hear their thinking and listen to them, how they talk, what their heart is, what their dreams are. You need to find the key to every person in your group's life. If I could sit down with you today and I'd say, let's talk about the people in your group. And in seeing that person, I'd say, tell me, what's the key to their life? What's the key to their life? What's the key to their life? What's their dream? What makes them tick? What's their greatest joy? What's their greatest sickness? What's their greatest sorrow? You see, these are things that you ought to know as a leader, because these